There was something shared from the Autism Network that's about autism and sport being linked from a scientific diagnosis. It's a survey about a project called Sakri, and it's about sport and autism from a scientific diagnosis to the creation of a pedagogical European model. But the reason I shared this, in fairness, wasn't about that project itself, but how sport and autism links together for many people. And basically, it's from my perspective, if you're playing a sport, I've done it with football and badminton. So it was just that sort of conversation on that.
All the sport I did was solo sports. I think the group sports were probably more difficult for me.
Yeah, tennis. For me, tennis is something that helps.
Is that playing tennis or watching tennis? Just
Playing tennis.
Do you play tennis regularly?
I do. Yeah, twice a week. I just started it up a few weeks ago. It was on break for the summer, so back doing it now the last few weeks. So, yeah.
So what do you get from it? What's the thing that links to autism, do you think, with the tennis?
I'm not sure. I just like doing it. I've been doing it for a long time, playing tennis for a long time. I play at Craig Lockhart Tennis Centre in Edinburgh.
You're quite good now, aren't you?
I'm pretty good. Yeah, I'm pretty decent.
Yeah.
I can identify with that. I used to be involved in a football team a few years ago. It was under the kind of disability model in terms of disability football competition.
Okay.
But it wasn't just disability. It was including autism and addictions, that sort of thing.
All right.
And I used to actually play 3 times a week, usually as a goalkeeper. I wasn't a great skill player, but it's not just about that. And what I found in sport that way, in the football anyway, is it occupies your mind because there's certain rules to follow, and you know the rules, you know how you win, how you lose, how you draw, I suppose. It helps the mind concentrate, and everybody is basically not the same, but if you're in a team, you're playing for each other, and you feel part of the crowd at the time because you're all going for one goal. So, but what I like, it's like a good distraction technique, I thought. There was one time during that time that I was involved in that was going through a hard time, feeling down, it was not feeling great at all, stress, etc. But concentrating on the rules of a sport had the knack to occupy the mind, and I thought, well, for the artistic mind that's meant to be obsessive and passionate about certain subjects you're interested in, that was very beneficial.
So it's a concentration on something.
Yeah, you're concentrating on something different.
You're absolutely in that world, aren't you?
Yeah.
So that's a good feeling.
Yeah.
I suppose it makes everything sort of feel a bit more under control as well, because one of the things I find with my autism is that lots of different thoughts keep coming at me.
Yeah.
But I can imagine if you're playing a sport, you're concentrating on one goal, and it's a release in that way, isn't it? It's a release from distracting thoughts.
Yeah. And you get endorphins from it too. You feel good from it as well.
Feel good endorphins, they're the hormones that make you feel happy, are they?
Yeah. If you've done a good shot, or if you feel like you're playing well, or you're doing well. Yeah.
So it's a positive reward. Yeah, I get that.
For tennis, this would be solo rather than team, wouldn't it? And that's suitable as well for us.
Well, there's doubles as well, so.
Yeah, no, but which one you do, I'm thinking.
More doubles, actually, than singles. Yeah.
I think actually the idea that Morris is saying is that it's if you're doing, you've got either one person on each side of the net or two people on each side of the net, haven't you? And it's a really small team if it is a team. So that kind of fits with a lot of autistic things, isn't it? You can concentrate on your positioning, where you are, what you hit, how you do it, and then maybe maximum you have to consider is one other person spatially aware near you. It's not like a rugby or yeah. So there seems to be a link that.
Yeah, it's not like a team sport. Yeah, it's an individual sport, or yeah.
But then Harry's talking about doing a football, but I suppose in some ways, because the position he's playing, it's a very concentrated game being the goalie, isn't it? Because there's one goal and you're concentrating on the ball coming towards it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Being the goalie, it's like you see the game.
You see the whole of it from there.
Yeah, the whole of it. And don't get me wrong, sometimes I acted like the manager. I was a bit of a moaner. But it was good. I did enjoy it. And the point I was making is it's the way it takes the mind, not elsewhere, but into the moment. And it's very kind of therapeutic. And I would recommend that to anyone who's interested in sports, of course. And it won't just be, I mean, I'm only talking about what I've done. I mean, I've done football and I've been involved in playing badminton as well, which has been the doubles badminton. But there's obviously things you do on your own, like badminton and tennis as well. But as you say, Julian, you talk about running and stuff like that. I mean, it takes you into a zone, I'd imagine, the same way.
Yeah, I used to do a lot of long distance cycling when I was younger. I don't do it now so much, and I'm protecting my knees from that kind of wear. There's a lot about regular activity helping people stave off the ageing symptoms, Alzheimer's and dementias, and quite small amounts of physical activity keep the blood flow to the brain and help our demise. I think a lot of autistic people avoid physical activity and don't really get enough fresh air, frankly. A lot of gamers and things. I think there's a lot of autistic lifestyles that are quite negative as far as their health goes, and any kind of activity in sport has to be encouraged, really.
Well, absolutely. I mean, when I'm talking about the football, I mean, I haven't been involved in that for about 8 years now, nearly 9, because it was January 2015. So, and I've not been as active as I would, that I used to be, so I can totally understand that side. I've got into the sort of habit where a lot of not gaming, but online activity, a lot's in the house, a lot's in the flat, so to speak, so there's not as much exercise as I used to, so the sport is an option, but only if you're interested in the sport, because a lot of people, not just autistic, but many autistic people aren't interested in the sport, and basically they get picked on for it at one time, because that's maybe the normal activity, particularly football.
Yeah,
It's a strange one.
I'd be the last to be picked to go out on anything in primary school or secondary school.
I was the same.
It's me and the kid with asthma.
Yeah, well, there's ways of encouraging people to be involved in school and other places. It was like you had to be the best, which is an absolute nonsense. Like
no, you should just do it for fun. Yeah.
Doing it for fun, taking part, and that's what I done with the football anyway. So, and the badminton, because that was just like 4 of us meeting up once a week.
Anything that gets the heart racing and gets you looking at stuff flying through the air is good for your brain work.
I was going to say, go out and watch birds as long as you're walking around and you do it.
Yeah, true, actually. Just getting outside and walking around, the amount of steps you take can be... It isn't really the heart-pumping stuff that's as necessary as people think. A lot of just walking and getting and being fit and active and moving your body, climbing up your own stairs, doing your own washing up instead of using a dishwasher, stuff like that, I don't do sport. I do concrete making. There's a lot of picking up 25 kilo sacks and chucking them down and hitting things with hammers that are sport-like actions, you know, but for a different sort of physical result.
Some folks, if they're in the middle of urban terrains, might find their outdoors challengingly people-filled, and has everyone got access to the more open space, empty type of outdoors.
You're right.
Or travel further for it.
There's a shortage of public open space that feels safe for people, that's true. But if you do have access to, you know, some safe streets to walk on that have a few trees on them, or a safe park at the right time of day where it's not overwhelmingly busy, and you can time it right, then it's something to aim for, isn't it?
The next one is from the autistic teacher, and it says, proscoganosia, also known as face blindness, means a struggle to recognise people's faces.
It's prosopagnosia.
Thank you, Liz. This occurs in more than 36% of autistic adults compared to 2% in the actual general population, according to this.
Okay, so is this something that's on a scale? Because I have real difficulty remembering people's faces and attaching them to the right person, but eventually I do get it for some people. Is it something you can't build up, or is it... Have I got it, or am I just bad at remembering faces?
I think it comes in degrees, so I'd refer to mine as mild. I have a little anecdote. I don't know if you've ever watched The Repair Shop.
Oh, yes, I know it.
Now, I've been watching it since before it was cool. So I watched it for about 4 years, and I genuinely thought that Steve and Brendan were the same person. They're both bold, middle-aged white dudes that wear glasses, and they both do stuff with metal. And I kind of clocked that they had different names, but I just thought that was one of those weird, like, workshop banter things. It wasn't until I saw them in the same shop, because they were both working on the same project, and I'm like, those are two different people. So so I find it difficult to differentiate between people who look similar or who don't have very identifying features. Like if someone wears glasses, that's brilliant, because I can try and remember the glasses.
And the bastards change them, don't they?
Well, yeah, there is that. I mean, once I've met someone a few times, generally I can remember them, but sometimes it's context dependent. One of the jobs I had, my boss's mum would come into the shop twice a week, and I worked there for about 2 months, so I met this person like 16 times. If you put an elderly lady in front of me, I wouldn't be able to tell you if that was her or not. It wasn't until she started talking and she asked how her son was doing, and I'm like, oh, okay, so you're the boss's mum. So there are certain faces I find very difficult, or when I see a lot of similar people in a similar context, I find it hard to differentiate them. And if I'm watching a TV show where there's more than one blonde female character, I really struggle. Like
there's only a dozen actresses in the world. There's a red-haired one, there's a black-haired one, there's a blonde one with glasses, there's a tall one, a short one. There's only 12 of them.
I thought I was face blind. Oh, okay.
No, they go through all different names. I know they keep making up different names, but they're all basically 12 people, I'm sure.
I think you're right. So there are kind of degrees of it. For some people, it's a bigger problem. Some people cannot recognise their own family members,
right?
And it seems like there are degrees of ability to remember facial features and the organisation of facial features. Some people don't recognise themselves in a mirror.
Wow.
Yeah, and obviously that's going to be quite difficult to live with if you don't recognise your spouse, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
is this Oliver Sacks territory? A man who
Yes,
mistook his
he
wife for a
ended up
hat or
with
something?
face blindness as a result of, I can't remember what condition he
Some
had.
kind
but
of tumour
oh
or
no,
something.
that was a linguistic thing.
Oh, okay.
That wasn't face blindness.
Okay, there's something else.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was something else. That was identification of objects.
I've completely
of
ignored my own doctor. Well, my doctor was
semantics.
seeing me often. He saw me more often than I'd been seen for a while because there was a reason, and it was also around the time I was trying to get a referral to be autistic, and several times I completely ignored him in the street, and I didn't know who he was. If he wasn't in his office, I had no idea who he was.
Yeah, I would say you have face blindness to a similar degree to me. You get really good at fudging conversations and speaking to people without making any reference
Exactly.
to them at all.
No clue who they are.
Not a clue. No, it happens to me all the time.
Yeah,
People go, "Hey, how are you?" And I'm like, "Oh, not again." So you kind of go, "Yeah, I'm good. How are you? How are things with?"
And you're gradually putting them into various categories, like, yeah, I think this person's a shopkeeper.
Yeah.
What kind of shop? What shop do they own? Is this a butcher or is this a newsagent guy? Who the hell is this person?
Yeah, I remember saying to one guy who, and I knew him from the pub, and I saw him at the pub, so it was in the right context. He was wearing a suit. I thought he was a customer, and I said, "How are the kids?" Meaning because I thought he was the head teacher of a local school. And it wasn't him at all.
Oh, absolutely.
And he was like, "I don't have children." And I'm like, "No, not you." I said, "No, the ones. Are you not the head teacher?" I was like, "Oh my God, I'm really sorry." And then it's like, but I would talk to that person like every time I was in the pub because they were in there all the time. That was probably the worst one, where I got mixed up with somebody else, but I did know who he was. So that was embarrassing, that one. I just had to go, "I'm really sorry. I'm a bit face blind." I actually tell people now. Like, if I meet them for the first time and I'm not sure I'll see them again, but they might remember me, I say, just to let you know, I'm a bit face blind. If I don't recognise you, say, and I'll give them like a code word or something that we've been talking about so I can remember who they are. And I say, honestly, like, please don't take offence, but I just don't remember some people's faces. Yeah, so that's what face blindness is.
I think I'm fairly mild on this, but here's an embarrassing one. You told an embarrassing one, I'll do another one. I read in my local newspaper that the local fire and brimstone vicar was regaling his congregation about how same-sex marriage should not happen. And I come across this character at a lot of funerals, knew absolutely who this person was. And then as he walked past my shop in the town, in context, I said, I want to have a word with you. And I regaled him on my open attitude and told him quite a few home truths. Wasn't the guy, wasn't the priest at all. Totally different person. Completely got on my high horse with somebody who was similar looking.
I can only say well done.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I didn't come out of it well. As it turned out, the person who I had mistakenly had a go at turned out not to be a very nice person either. So in the end, I ended up feeling not guilty.
I know someone number 6 who has face blindness, actually. He said he has face blindness.
But he doesn't know you.
He knows me, but he says he can't recognize certain people. Okay. So yeah.
I suppose I do have it a little, It is an issue that I can't tell a lot of people apart. But as Liz has pointed out, there's a wide variation in how people live under that term, isn't there?
Yeah.
The next one is an interesting one because it's been touched on before. It's from the Neurodivergent Rebel, and it's about the symbol, about the puzzle piece that a lot of autistic organisations and sometimes autistic people use. And basically it says, there may be some autistic people who have no problem with and may even use versions of the puzzle piece logo for themselves. Over the years since my diagnosis, people around me have used this symbol and it has become a red flag. And basically it's talking about that when they've raised this issue, saying that they feel that this symbol is not appropriate in their head, that people have taken it badly. There may be some autistic people who have no problem and may even use versions of the puzzle piece logo for themselves. Over the years since my diagnosis, people around me using this symbol has become a red flag. I have been mistreated online by people who use that symbol, so I see that as someone uses this symbol, I approach cautiously or go the other way as quickly as possible. Some people I encounter need help understanding the history of this symbol and will come round eventually. Others don't care or agree with missing piece theme because, according to this person, the proactive autism speaks in ABA. Many of the people who love this logo are non-autistics who feel their autistic loved one is puzzling to them, or that autism was a missing piece of information. Choosing to will a new meaning onto symbol that online is often compared to hate symbols and flags used by various hate groups. That's quite heavy.
Okay, so what do you feel about the puzzle piece? When I see it, I think, oh dear.
Looking at it right now, it's like someone who needs to be fixed rather than someone who needs to be supported.
Yeah.
And I can see how many people can take this, in a very negative way.
I think it's a very powerful symbol, and it symbolises exactly what it was meant to symbolise by the people who designed it. The fact that autism is part of a puzzle, there's a missing piece in a puzzle, it's something that needs rebuilding, something that needs fixing together, something, all of the different things that come from how the logos look, how the puzzle piece brings emotions, they are exactly what was intended. And it symbolises a very old world.
It's often used as a piece that doesn't fit in its surroundings. So it's kind of sometimes overtly quite offensive, like this will never fit because it's not part of the puzzle.
I can't think of any aspect of its symbolism that isn't offensive.
Further down on the post itself, it was like saying that stereotypically to people that are non-autistic, it's like people who have autism are mysteries, and those mysteries must be solved to fix them, rather than ask them the question and to find out of their own identity. It's like they're strange people, they don't fit in with the rest of society, and we need to do something to fix them so they fit in with the rest of society, which we all know is a nonsense because the rest of society are all different from each other. It was quite a powerful post, this one, particularly because this symbol, I do recall it being used many times over the years, and it's about charities.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it still is now, but I do remember it being used, and it was like,
doesn't the National Autistic Society still use it?
No, they don't. Their logo is
somewhere.
The National Autistic Society don't. Autism Speaks, yes. The National Autistic Society has, I can't describe it, it's circular and colourful.
Circle, some kind of thing,
That's as good as you're going to get.
Yeah. I think they used to have puzzle pieces though, didn't they? A lot of parents groups used to have puzzle pieces.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't out of badness and fairness, it's just like lack of understanding.
Well, it doesn't mean the same necessarily to them. To us, it's incredibly offensive.
Well, that's a fair point.
So this person is somebody who's got a Substack, yeah? So that's some kind of blog thing. So
Neurodivergent
that
Rebel
post-
is an advocate and an author. They've got a book called Workplace Neurodiversity Rising. I think that's right. And they do advocacy and activism.
The next one is Joy of Autism, and this is a good one. Autism may be more noticeable in boys than girls, but it doesn't mean autism is easier for girls than boys.
Well, it's interesting that the people who have decided to put something in response to that, somebody called Faye says that I personally think it's harder on girls. Somebody called Jerry says harder in some ways, and they get, people putting that they agree with that. Things like exactly, and it makes me wonder. Dr. Ian puts down, totally true, and it needs student psychologists to be better trained to spot the differences and recognise autistic women.
Then the male brain folks used to think learning of masking was more culturally innate from the girls' angle in society.
Yeah, they thought women were just like that. It was a part of nature. They believed that there's a nature difference between men and women in an exaggerated form rather than it being conditioning. Gender for them is a very simple equation, not the kind of way that we think about gender now.
No. What I do recall from my experience is when I started going to the social group when I was first diagnosed, within a year or two, that most members of these groups were male.
Yeah.
There wasn't that many female there at all.
There's less stigma in being autistic if you're male.
I'm going back late 90s here, in fairness. It felt like there was the token female in one or two of these groups.
And those people may not even consider themselves that to be the correct gender assignment now either.
Well, quite possibly, yeah. I'm only making an assumption from what I was aware of at the time, but yeah, you're right.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, but, yeah. I just thought it was an interesting thing to raise because it's like an assumption that's made, and it's like trying to say that, this is from my own perspective, of course, is like autism is more easier in female than it is in males. Well, girls more than boys. Is it the kind of terminology on that one?
I think guys get an easier ride in everything in life, including autism.
Not including bloody clothes,
No,
which affects autism through sensory issues.
What, you think men's clothes are worse? I think women think that
Less range of.
Yeah. Yeah, less
The
range.
women would agree with you on that. They feel as though they're pressurised into... Well, sorry, when I said women, I mean all kinds of other people. I think traditionally, clothing is one of the ways that women get restricted in society.
I think the main issue with women's clothes is that there's no fucking pockets.
Yeah, no, pockets is the other thing. Yeah. A man is assumed to need to have things like wallets and passports and important stuff.
Really annoying. If you don't want to carry a handbag, you might then have to change an outfit because you've got no pockets.
Yeah.
But I think there is more range in women's clothes. I mean, I will shop in... It depends what I'm looking for. If I'm looking for shirts, I'll shop in both sections. If I'm looking for t-shirts, I'll shop generally in the men's section because the t-shirts are cooler there.
That's true.
Trousers, it depends on the cut. If it's high-waisted, I can get away with man-cut trousers. But I think there's a bit more choice in women's fashion. You can wear leggings.
There's an awful lot of women's fashion, though, are just sort of restrictive and of materials that are crinkly.
God, yeah, there's an awful lot of rubbish out there, but there's similarly an awful lot of hideous clothing designed for men out there as well. But I think women have the choice of wearing various lengths of shorts or trousers, various
Shorts,
lengths of
skirts,
skirts.
trousers,
There's dresses, there's jumpsuits,
Culottes,
there's leggings, there's a much wider range of styles that you can wear, and nobody goes, "Oh my God, what do they think they're wearing?" But if you're a bloke and you go out wearing pink leggings, people are going to look, and you might get, I've got a friend who is male, but always shops for his jeans in the women's section because he likes colourful jeans. Now he's lucky because he's small and he can do that.
I mix and match both sexes stuff. I think the trousers thing, I think you do get some softer trousers and you do get more elastane and stuff in some of the women's stuff. I think you also get some softer fabrics in the stuff that's close to your skin, like the polo shirt, polo necks and things like that. So there are advantages in some of the women's section stuff.
The next one is about screen time. It's about all people with autism that spend a lot of time online and gaming, etc. And Autistic Village has put a post up saying that new research further backs what autistics have been saying all along. Screen time is not bad for autistic mental health. Where neurotypicals frame online socialising in terms of competition and comparison, autistic are far more likely to view it in terms of connection and finding similarities.
Yep.
For many autistics, screen time, instead of causing anxiety and depression, acts as a way to relieve and reduce the anxiety and depression we already had. This is only one paper, but indicates that the researchers are now looking into this particular direction.
This has been my sort of feeling about the matter. I think this study goes into what I've naturally observed in autistic people.
The online thing does feel, even though, when I talk about online, a lot of online stuff that I do, apart from this, is Facebook. And even though social media can feel very dangerous, and it can be very dangerous, it does feel like it is more within your own control and how you use it, and how the information that you receive and the friends you make. And it's like, you're, like, for instance, saying something, you cannot delete saying something, but if you type something, obviously before you send it, you can actually delete, because maybe you're regretting saying that, or if you're not explaining it enough. It just seems like text, and being in a sort of, it feels like, it depends what it is, but if it's the right way, it feels like a protected environment. It feels a lot more beneficial than the so-called, as they call it, the real world. But it's not the real world, it's the physical world in terms of interaction. Online is a real world. Every action you make has consequences.
Yep.
There's so much common sense that your own interest space, comfort spaces, emotional health is where you're healthy and less anxious is going to be, and no one can come along and say, I know what's good for you. That never works.
I think what neurotypical people see is that neurotypical children having their self-esteem denuded and damaged by social media, when I think actually what in the autistic world it can be the opposite that happens.
Well, it's personal good and bad in social media can always happen to all, but screen time, choice of what to do, and thinking of how you manage the people dealing.
Screen time is often the only option available to many autistic people in any kind of quantity. So the whole idea of restricting it is taking away an outlet of community, an outlet of connection, networking, their opportunity to share similar thoughts and feelings. Anything that reduces autistic access to online forums is a negative in my book.
Absolutely. There's many people who feel, and I've had this period myself, where it feels hard to leave the house due to anxiety, depression, stress. You don't feel good enough, you don't feel confident enough to leave the house.
No.
But there's this option where you still can communicate with others online in a positive
and you can
way.
build up the confidence to leave the house as well.
Well, that's true, yeah. People can, familiarise how you're feeling, they can help you take those steps forward. And it feels that you're part of the community as well. Because in the past, many people, including myself, felt not part of the community.
Yeah.
Not out of people's badness, but you just felt within you just weren't part of it because you felt so different.
So the feeling of exclusion.
Yeah. So identify with that.
I think even before the internet, I used television, black and white television, watching the world repeatedly and trying to understand the different structures that were happening in society, how things related to each other, and I studied it. TV, it depends on what's on the screen, not that it's a screen.
Yeah.
It's quite an important thing about our public broadcasting here in the UK, that we've got the BBC at the moment. Something that the vested interests of certain media organisations are always attacking. But they create a climate of television and online content and podcasts and radio in our country that give people opportunities to learn about new things, see things from a different aspect. Those screens, they're important to autistic people.
That's very true. You can learn so much without having to overexert yourself to look for something to learn. It's something that you see and you take in, and I totally identify with that as well, because there was a time before internet. I mean, we talk about internet like it's always been here, but of course it's still fairly recent.
I would always want to exert to find something like the big science magnum opus series and serious stuff rather than any mainstream social attitude stuff that before the times when you could react to it could be a knock to watch, but certainly wherever there's a variety of stuff you can sift good stuff out of it, the good stuff that's right for you.
I think there's something interesting about broadcast television and radio, though, is that it's curated for you and somebody schedules it, which means that you come across things that you wouldn't otherwise have come across, and before you know it, you're interested in something you would have searched out yourself to be interested in. So I think there is a shame sometimes that we only search the things we're interested in now.
I don't find that so much because of being selective with the schedules. I think actually I've probably found it more on YouTube with odd Facebook video cues with things I might come across by chance. There's another angle of how to come across.
Yeah, I think as long as people do make sure they come across things by chance and come across new opportunities, that's the important thing, wherever you do it.
A lot of things I watch now is basically YouTube. And even though there's a limited niche because it's recommending things based on what you've watched before, there is the occasional surprise. But television's a bit different because something would come on that you would never think of actually watching or seeing, but it just happened to be on at the time. I mean, there was like a film years ago that was on, the Sunshine Boys, Walter Matthau and George Burns, and I I went and watched that, you know, because I would never have known about it at the start. And I actually enjoyed it very much. So
Good film.
I know it's a good film. It's a very extreme example, but it just shows you that television is still powerful in that one way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that only works if you feel okay sitting in front of it and taking a chance what comes, which they often like enough of what comes to do.
Well, you can do both, can't you? Because you can have it so that you spend some time having a quick look, and if there's nothing that grabs your attention, yes, you can go away, but giving yourself the opportunity to be in the place where something that you wouldn't normally have chosen however you do it seems to be the thing for me.
But I know what Morris is saying though is there was times in the past where I used to watch the films and then actually watched all and then felt that, not just films, programmes, whatever, and I felt that my time's been wasted, and I've always kind of dreaded, you know, to do that again. So, and now with the way technology is, that you don't have to actually put yourself through that. So sometimes you don't put yourself forward of the element of surprise, but at least it's still there if you try to take that chance. This is Spectrum Voices Conversation, here from 6pm, 7:30pm UK time every Sunday, and 1pm to 2:30pm Eastern Standard Time in the United States. So thanks everyone for listening, taking part, and we'll be back next week. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, fella.
Good night.